Well, welcome back to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. Excited to be here for our live taping of U.S. Farm Report at National Farm Machinery Show. Always a great audience. A lot of folks coming back. A big thanks to Great Plains as well as Tyrannus for sponsoring our live taping here at National Farm Machinery Show. Joe Vaclavik, Andrew Jackson, as well as Alan Hoskins joining us today for the discussion. Joe, I'll start with you. You know, there's a lot of different fundamentals right now at play. We're talking about the situation in Ukraine, talking about concerns of, weather in Argentina. I know you have been talking about avian flu and the impact as well. But when you look at the main market drivers today, what is leading the charge?
I think South America has been a tremendous influence on the soybean market and on the soy complex in particular. Argentina's crop is going to end up being, their soybean crop, it's going to end up 20 to 30% below what we thought it may have been prior to the growing season. They've had what some people would say is the worst drought in 60 years. Just today, as a matter of fact, there was one real well-followed private group that reduced its production estimate for the Brazilian soybean crop. And the Brazilian soybean crop's still going to be record large, but that is something that I think has helped to keep the old crop soybean market above $15 on the board. It's probably helped the new crop bean market also. It's probably helped the corn market to some extent. So I think that Argentina weather story in terms of your major producers, that's probably been the biggest one the last couple of months.
Andrew, but when you look at that situation, when you look at Argentina, I know the verdict's still out on exactly what that crop size is going to be. There were some changes to Brazil, but still it's a really big Brazilian, crop down there. They've had nearly ideal weather in some areas. So does that change the trajectory at all when it comes to the supply and demand balance sheet here in the U.S. based on those unknowns right now?
Well, if the Brazilian crop wasn't so big, the Argentine story would have more legs than what it already does. So first of all, Brazil's going to have a lot of exportable supplies, and it's going to be halfway about logistics. So when it's time for those beans to come to the market, it's also time for those to come to export, all right, which means it's going to start cutting into our export window. So really the U.S. has to make hay when the sun shines, and that time for us is, December, January, February. Once we get past that window, it gets really tough for us to be competitive.
Alan, we're talking now about South America, but planting is knocking on the door, and a lot of those decisions are being made. When you're talking to a lot of your customers right now, are there big acreage decisions being made, or is it pretty much going to be the same as sticking with the rotation?
I think that's going to be regional based upon that. I've talked to some producers that are going much heavier corn this year than what they have historically. But I think most people that I'm working with and most of the other bankers that I talk to, the producers are doing a good job in looking at the opportunities that are presented based on their break-evens. And I think they're doing a better job, of putting together good marketing plans with folks like Joe and Andrew. And they're doing a much better job in following those plans, but understanding they're not set in concrete either.
Joe, right now, what does the trade think that acreage is going to be? What do you think we're trading at this point? What are the numbers?
Everything economically that I'm aware of favors corn acres versus soybean acres. Every balance sheet that I've seen, the vast majority of them, there's always exceptions, but most of the balance sheets that I've seen for your, say, high-density production areas in your I-states, Minnesota into South Dakota, they favor corn pretty drastically. The one issue is that inputs are really high. So if somebody doesn't necessarily want to lay out $1,100 an acre to plant corn and they want to go the cheaper route, I suppose they could go to soybeans. And then you've always got the normal rotation crowd. I did a survey of my subscriber base just a couple of weeks ago, and the most common answer, are you going to change acres, same rotation, if you're going to change more corn and more soybeans, the most common answer is always stick with the rotation. But there's going to be those swing acres, and those swing acres, generally speaking, on a national basis, they should go to corn.
Andrew, where you are, kind of in this Mid-South area, are you seeing a big shift in acreage?
Well, pretty much what Joe says. I think corn pencils. Corn probably has more upside potential. But I do think that there were maybe some acres that maybe some rotations that went heavier. Beans over the last year or so, especially with high inputs last year. Inputs are down this year. So I do see some of those rotations going back towards corn, maybe just a little bit. As far as total acres corn plus soy, there are some people that still think that we're going to be 180 plus. I've seen a lot of estimates in the 179 million plus. I have a hard time getting there personally just because last year we were 176. records 180 and a half, and it took 0 prevent plant to get there.
Alan, whenever farmers right now are looking at their balance sheets, kind of penciling things out, looking at acreage decisions, what's something that maybe that needs to be at the forefront of their minds that maybe they're not thinking about at this point?
Well, obviously that wouldn't be interest, because that's one of the primary things that they're looking at right now. And as we're talking about going heavier corn with the increased interest rates, that's something that they're looking at. One of the things that, in my opinion, they need to probably look very, very closely at is what is going to be their true return? How does it fit into their long-term strategy? Because Andrew's exactly right. We did see some guys go heavier on beans the last couple of years. They're back into corn, and I think they just need to be more mindful of the effect that the change may have on them 2 or 3 years down the road.
Well, there's a lot of questions there's a lot of questions on the demand front too, especially when it comes to China. We haven't even got into that yet, so we need to take a break. But I do want to hit on China later on U.S. Farm Report, so stay with us. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll have much more right here on U.S. Farm Report.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.